Well, good afternoon to you. It is now 3:06 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up, David Strom from Hot Air joins us at 3:30. Chris Bedford is here at 4:30. Ryan Gerdusky stops by at 5 o'clock. And then at 5:30, Ian Pryor with America First Legal. We have an update, a very important update on a story we talked about with Ian recently. As he was trying to get his organization sent a letter to the United States Department of Education saying, you need to investigate 5 Northern Virginia school districts immediately for what they're doing to the students. The United States Department of Education responding today. All the news ahead. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, there's a lot going on domestically right now. A lot. President Trump this afternoon just signed an executive order stripping funding, federal funding, from any school in the country that's receiving that federal funding, yet still requiring COVID-19 jabs, forced COVID jabs for students or staff at the schools. Trump saying, no more. You can't do this. You cannot forcibly COVID jab everybody who enters the doors of your building. If you do, you lose your federal funding. That's President Trump today signing that executive order as his efforts once again continue to rapidly fulfill all of the promises he made during his campaign. And that news story I just mentioned that I'm going to talk about coming up at 5:30 with Ian Pryor, it seems very important. The United States Department of Education today has announced it will be investigating whether 5 Northern Virginia school districts and their policies when it comes to so-called transgender students, in other words, kids who've been convinced that they were born in the wrong body, whether those policies violate Title IX. The 5 school districts in question are Loudoun County Public Schools, Fairfax County Public Schools, Arlington Public Schools, Alexandria City Public Schools, and Prince William County Public Schools. Now, all subject to United States Department of Education civil rights investigation as of today. We'll talk to Ian Pryor coming up. His organization, have been pushing for this very thing, and now they have confirmation from the Department of Education that, yes, they will investigate. It's really big. So, again, Ian joins us at 5:30 to discuss that. So, one other domestic thing I'll mention, and then I want to move to international news because J.D. Vance is making a lot of waves today. Domestic thing is we still don't have Kath Patel as FBI director. Boy, I wish we did. I really wish we did. We do not have Kath Patel. Now, we could have him early next week, but right now I can say with certainty we're not getting him today, and we're not getting him this weekend because those senators who were contemplating going on a German vacation went. They left, and they went on a German vacation. They went to the Munich Security Conference. There is no reason for a United States senator to be there, none whatsoever right now, giving the pressing importance of the domestic agenda here in the United States. J.D. Vance and company have it covered. They can handle the international business right now. We don't need U.S. senators there. And yet a whole room of senators. I'm looking at, who am I looking at? This is Adam Schiff. John Cornyn is there. Joni Ernst is in the room. There's Sheldon Whitehouse grinning like an idiot. Lindsey Graham, positively giddy. They're all overseas meeting today with Zelensky. Listen to this. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you, pal. That's Lindsey Graham. Good to see you. He's having a great time. He's beaming. He's like he just met Michael Jordan. He is so impressed meeting Vladimir Zelensky. So that's the story today about those guys not attending to the domestic affairs of the country. J.D. Vance defending our obligation to the American people today and speaking to Europe and not holding back. The international headlines to this on J.D. Vance's speech today are so panicked and hysterical, I can't get enough of it. Listen to J.D. say, okay, look, there's a lot of conversation here. We're talking about Russia. We're talking about China. But I have to say, one of the most pressing threats that exists right now is the threat to our own peoples from within. Stop crippling their ability to freely communicate.
And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief.
Yeah. Yeah. So running down the list of, hey, all of these different countries, you've been trampling free speech. You've been trampling the civil liberties of your own people. You know, it's obviously there are outside threats, but have you looked within lately? And it is, and J.D. Vance today, you know, to his great credit, the reason he expresses this is because he recognizes that the United States owes much of its legacy to Europe, to Western civilization. I mean, think of the Magna Carta dating back to 1215, and it was a document designed to elevate the power of the people and to restrain the power of the government, in that case, the king. We have a copy of the Magna Carta right here in the United States archives, here in Washington, D.C. It's deeply important, this legacy. And if you're J.D. Vance, now with a long view, he's a smart guy, he has a real appreciation of history, he's looking at Europe and saying, what has happened? He is absolutely disturbed by what's happening there. And he doesn't really hold back today. And they're all upset about it. I'm telling you, the headlines out of Europe today, they're going absolutely bonkers that he said the truth out loud.
And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own.
Silently praying.
And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Oh. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
These are communist impulses he's describing. He's describing something that sounds very Soviet, doesn't it? That Britons are being watched over for committing thought crimes. In fact, here is, this is some video from 2022. Our friend Mary Margaret Olahan reminds us of this today. Here are police in the United Kingdom arresting a woman for silently praying just outside of an abortion mill. They asked her, what are you doing here? Why are you here? She's not blocking any entrance. She's standing in front of a shrub, in front of a hedgerow. No, nobody is impeded. The sidewalk is completely free. She's squeezed up against the hedge by herself. Nobody else is there except the person who's capturing all of this on video. And here's what it sounded like as the police confronted her.
What are you here for today?
Physically, I'm just standing here.
Okay. Why here of all places? I know you don't live nearby.
But this is an abortion centre.
Okay, that's why.
Why are you standing here? Why here of all places? And she says, this is an abortion center.
Is you standing here part of the protest?
No, I'm not protesting.
Are you praying?
I might be praying in my head.
Are you praying? He asks. I might be praying in my head, she says. She begrudgingly admits.
So I'll ask you once more, will you voluntarily come with us now to the police station for me to ask you some questions about today and other days where there are allegations that you've broken public spaces protection order?
If I've got a choice, then no.
Okay, well then you're under arrest on suspicion of failing to comply with the public spaces protection order, which is
Yeah, so they arrest her. They arrest her. Once they establish that she's been praying silently in her head outside of an abortion mill, they say, you're under arrest. And they pretend like she had a choice in the first place. She said, would you be willing to come with us to the police station? She said, so long as I have a choice, no. He goes, okay, well, then you're under arrest. So that's actually happening in the UK. And it's not every day that you get one of these big summits of Europeans where they're all patting each other on the back that somebody comes in and says, hey, that's wrong what you're doing. J.D. Vance doing that today. Here's more from the Vice President of the United States.
And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course it's gotten much higher since. And we know the situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction?
That's right. It was from Afghanistan, an asylum seeker in Germany ramming a car into a crowd in Munich, right there where they're having that so-called security conference, injuring dozens of people very severely. And J.D. Vance is going, look, we're all praying for the victims here, but what are the policies that led this to happening in the first place? And why won't you address those? You need to. A lot of common sense coming out of J.D. Vance. I'll tell you a little bit more about what he said and the reaction to it in just a moment. All right. Yeah, look, J.D. just says so many great things to that. I have a lot of audio from it. I recommend, find some time to sit down with the speech and grab your favorite beverage and enjoy it. It's really good. The smattering of applause from time to time. There's like 8 people in the room who support him. Everyone else is shifting in their seats, all angry about it. Here's some of the headlines. Guardian, J.D. Vance stuns Munich conference with blistering attack on Europe's leaders. Here's the UK Independent. Fury as J.D. Vance attacks European leaders in anti-immigration rant at Munich conference. It's a rant. You could tell what they think of it. Reuters, Vance attack on Europe overshadows Ukraine talks at security conference. In Politico today, J.D. Vance attacks Europe over migration, free speech. Yeah, J.D. Vance spanks Europe, hopefully into submission. They deserve it. They really do, and I'm glad to see him call them out. Let's see. I've got a couple calls coming in. Leo from Colorado, line 1. Hello, Leo. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. I got to this whole thing about the senators being in Europe right now is absolute ludicrous. First off, let's remind the listening audience who is paying for their little vacay. All right. So everybody that's over there to assist the vice president in his duties shouldn't be there. And I thought that's why Marco Rubio was hired for the job, is to be over there to help negotiate things like this.
In fact, Rubio, and not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I just want to mention Rubio and J.D. Vance met with Zelensky today. So why are we sending dozens of senators over for no reason other than for them to smile and shake hands with Zelensky and at taxpayer expense go to Munich and have a nice German dinner and all this? No, they've got plenty of business back here to be handling right now.
Absolutely. And what they ought to be handed is a bill for their travels and all the costs incurred.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then we do what the government does to government workers when you need to pay. We garnish their wages.
Yeah.
I know it's not going to really hurt them, but you know what? When it becomes a matter of public record, because everything they do, say, and everything is a matter of public record,
right?
Then it might get their attention. You know, I applaud Elon Musk. Everybody's having this tantrum, you know, and in New York, they need to settle down. They need to shut up, sit down, and do their jobs. Plain and simple.
Actually, you know, that leads to this. That's such a smart point. Thank you. And, you know, I'll finish with this. J.D. Vance today saying this about Elon.
And expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor. If American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg's scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk.
Rightfully so. Yeah, we had to listen to that child oracle. How dare you? Yeah, how dare we? Coming up, David Strom with Hot Air will talk to us about why liberals are in the mess that they're in. And turns out they created it. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 3:35, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Chris Bedford will be here at 4:30, Ryan Gordusky at 5 o'clock. Then at 5:30 from America First Legal, Ian Pryor joins us. Breaking news today is the United States Department of Education announces that it is launching civil rights investigations into 5 Northern Virginia school districts. Ian will join us to discuss that. And you can talk to us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I know it's fun to say because of the alliteration, but it's true right now. Dems are in disarray. The Democrats are in complete disarray right now. They don't even have a leader at the moment. Here's some examples of this. Here's a journalist, Mark Halperin, political journalist Mark Halperin, talking about what a difficult situation the Democrats are in at the moment.
I now am of the belief that things are actually really dire for the Democrats. And I see that in just a lot of ways. But let me tell you one way it's manifesting that's making me really rethink the prospect of a legitimate comeback, which is they've lost access to so many things that prop them up as asymmetrical, massive advantages for years. Not lost them completely, but entertainment, news, the academy, social media, like all these things, Silicon Valley fundraising, all these things that were either massive or mega massive advantages are now not, and they're trending the wrong way, and Republicans are on the offense to neutralize those even more.
In fact, many of those things are now liabilities. People laugh off Hollywood's preferences. One more thing from Mark Halperin, and then we'll get to our guest. Here's Mark saying that there's not a Democrat in the world that strikes fear into Republicans' chances coming up in 28.
You can tell me about Governor Beshear or Governor Moore, but at every previous cycle, I could tell you the names of people from the losing party who could run for president and would strike some fear in the hearts of the majority party. I cannot name a person like that today. Are they afraid of the governor of Illinois, or of Amy Klobuchar, or of Gavin Newsom, or of Wes Moore, or Governor Beshear? They are not. Maybe they should be, but they're not afraid of any Democrat right now. Not one. To the contrary, they're like, bring them on. We'll run against any of those people, regardless.
We'll run against any of those people. Joining us now, David Strom, associate editor over at Hot Air, to assess what's going on. Hey, David, good to have you back with us, sir.
You know, I have to admit, I'm getting a little tired of all this winning.
It's tiring you out? You're exhausted. You're tuckered out at this point.
Oh, I used to laugh when, I heard Trump say that. And now, I mean, obviously, I'm not tired of the winning. But, doesn't it feel like it's been 8 months since Trump got into office? And we're just, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks into it? It's just staggering. And,
yes.
The thing that is so striking to me, in fact, I wrote a piece this morning that was titled, "I Was Wrong About Trump." I voted for Trump. I liked Trump, but I didn't think that he had a plan to dismantle the deep state. In his first term, it ended in 2020 when the deep state seemed to win.
Yes.
But now he's come back stronger than ever.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just so eager to talk about what you're discussing here, because I think back to the primary phase. And I don't know if you mentioned it before. Did you support Ron DeSantis in the primary? Did you?
Absolutely.
And so the theory of DeSantis being the best candidate was that, Trump was the wrecking ball, but DeSantis is the scalpel. DeSantis will be the precision. He'll be able to target things in a precise way and take them down. And it turns out that Trump is launching, he's blotting out the sun with the number of arrows he's firing at the same time, and they're all hitting precision targets. It is really amazing to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a fleet of B-2 bombers, with JDAMs. They're just exploding everywhere. The Democrats, not only do they not know how to respond except with lawfare, most of which I don't think is going to actually help them out, and some of it, if Trump wins, is going to empower him even more. Democrats have overreached there. But he's actually going after, as Halperin says, all the centers of power, including something that he did not mention, which is, probably $1 trillion a year that the Democrats pour into all their, elite plans. That's going to be gone.
Yeah, no, we're watching something really epic happening right now, and my hope is that what we do is just destroy that party entirely. Like, how do we make sure that they never come back? I mean, first of all, just in terms of like American history and things that are worth dispensing with, the brand Democrat is about as atrocious as anything has ever been. So why don't you just retire that party entirely? And then, if there's some division of opinion within the Republican Party, then we can split up into our relative camps and battle it out and try and make the country better. What do you think?
Oh, I love that idea. I mean, I think we need to have alternative parties, because if you look at states like Utah, for instance, which are run exclusively by Republicans, eventually you develop a swamp among Republicans.
Exactly.
So, unaccountable parties, no matter whether they have the right ideology or the bad ideology,
right,
eventually become rotten. And that's what, Trump came in and the first place he dropped a nuclear bomb was on the Republican Party.
Yep.
And he cleared out a lot of not just deadwood, but people who were themselves part of the deep state.
Let me go to some polling that I think is fascinating here. Patrick Ruffini at Echelon Insights shares this image of a survey done this week, showing that among Democrat primary voters, they're being asked right now, if the 2028 Democrat primary were held today, for whom would you vote? Now, the top two are Kamala Harris at 36%, which is hilarious to me, and I hope they go with that, and Pete Buttigieg at 10%. Those are the two. Now, meanwhile, one of the standouts in this list that people may not have expected is Jasmine Crockett comes in. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett comes in at 2% support, but that's ahead of John Fetterman, Cory Booker, J.B. Pritzker, Raphael Warnock, Jared Polis, Andy Bashir. This is a party, David Strom, that hasn't learned any lessons.
Oh, no, there's clearly a group out there that has decided that the thing to do is move harder left. And, you know, there are Democrats out there who sell themselves as moderates, like, say, Maura Healey, who's the governor of Massachusetts, who is out there pursuing policies that literally they are letting child rapists out of prison because they're illegal immigrants and they don't want the feds to deport them. It is insane. And, you know, I mean, they're fighting over the gender affirming care, so-called, and, you know, they're just picking the hardest left policies. And most of those other people that you mentioned, you know, like Fetterman or Polis, you know, they sell themselves or even are moderates. But that's why they're at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. I've got some James Carville audio for you. Can't ever pass up James Carville audio. I love that.
Yeah.
So we know him normally as the Raging Cajun, but right now he's the real Cajun because he doesn't know what to do. He's just on his heels, and he's upset that his life's work is in tatters at the moment.
I mean, the point is we have these conversations. We talk to people on the phone. We go to cocktail parties and dinners, and we have things. You know, when you sit back and see, when you take it one by one, it's so much crazier than you can imagine that we're having this discussion. And one of the dangers that we have is we just become like, it just becomes elevator music or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you accentuate it. Do you oppose one thing? Do you oppose all five? Is it a personnel issue? Is it a policy issue? Maybe some of our I'm struggling here a little bit, so maybe some of our really smart viewers can help us untangle a little bit. It's really tangled now because no one knows where to land. It's all too incomprehensible.
So this guy, his career is that he's the genius who comes up with a pithy way in order to respond to Republicans and defeat them. He's completely overwhelmed, David Strom. He doesn't know what to do in this moment.
Well, I mean, one of the things that animates the political pros in the Democratic Party that they firmly believe in is that controlling the narrative is everything. And they have been exceptional at that because they had all the levers of cultural power out there. And you went through them: Hollywood, the mainstream media, social media, censorship organizations, and all of that has collapsed. And, you know, one of the striking things is they go out and they go to the bat for USAID, which is, you know, horribly unpopular. They're going to the wall on this, and they're doing it at the same time that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are getting out all the horrible things. You know, everyone thinks it's rice, beans, and medicine, and that's 10% of it. The rest is censorship, regime change, transgender ideology, you know, funding independent journalists that happen to be funded by the U.S. government, including, you know, one organization laid the predicate for the second Donald Trump impeachment.
Yeah.
And so people look at that and they say, this is what you're defending? You're insane.
Yeah. So do you predict any sort of change in strategy? I mean, or does some adult come out in that party and all of a sudden just kind of, you know, like grab the reins and start dominating, because I'm not seeing it happen in the House. I'm not seeing it happen in the Senate. There's certainly no realistic presidential candidate that's stuck their head up just yet. You know, does Gavin Newsom come flying in and pretend like he's the leader of the party? What happens here?
Well, I mean, clearly he's going to try to do that. I mean, he's been thinking of running for president forever. You know, he's been plotting it since he was mayor of San Francisco. But, you know, again, that appeals to maybe 30%, you know, the hardcore Democrats. But it's certainly not going to bring in any swing voters, especially when you look at his record, which is atrocious. You know, I don't know whether you have the Dean Phillips clip where he's talking about how the Democrats are just absolutely blowing it. They're, you know, they ought to be jumping on the bandwagon to clean up government, but instead they're out there arguing for all the worst things. And we know,
unfortunately, Democrats are only focused on one thing right now, Mr. Musk. The fact of the matter, he's quite popular. He has the largest platform in human history, which is, of course, Twitter/X. And I think we're missing the boat as Democrats. And all I'm saying is that sometimes it's better to join them and actually play a role in how the strategy works, rather than so pathetically, frankly, try to combat something that clearly is a steamroller, and Democrats are being steamrolled.
So his view is, you know, if you can't beat them, join them. Why aren't we doing that? And I don't see Democrats doing it. They're too far dug in.
Oh, well, yeah, and I don't think they can, actually. I wrote about him, about how charmingly naive he is. Because you know, this isn't about defending bureaucrats or liberal ideology or anything like that. All this money, hundreds of billions of dollars a year, is what funds their project.
Yes.
Everything. And so they need that. They cannot, you know, they will, it's an existential threat to them. I mean, they're funding the World Economic Forum. They're funding, you know, every single think tank. You know, almost every foreign journalist is on the take. We were funding the BBC. And to, you know, so all this propaganda, the censorship organizations, they can't let that go, because if it goes away, people will see. The Truman Show will be broken.
And, you know, it's so amazing, and I guess rightfully so, but it's made everyone so cynical, hasn't it, David? You know, like what you just described. Oh, we're funding Reuters, we're funding Politico, we're funding the BBC, the federal government was paying for all of this. And it's just like the list goes on and on and on. And, you know, a decade ago, if you start saying stuff like this, people kind of instinctively, reflexively laugh you out of the room. Okay, that guy's not serious. Let's go. Let's find somebody who's serious here. Now it's made us all so cynical. We're like, wait a second. So many of the most conspiratorial concepts you could possibly have about the behavior of your government, they just keep routinely coming true. And Washington is sitting here going, well, why do they hate us? Why don't they trust us? Why don't they listen to us? And the answer lies in the fact that every day there is some new scandal and some new confirmation that our worst fears are all being realized.
Yeah, when you see a memo from Anthony Blinken to Hillary Clinton talking about how Al-Qaeda is on our side, you know, it's like, what universe is this?
Yeah.
I mean, these people are evil. And the problem is that, you know, those of us who are patriotic don't want to believe that anyone who got elected could be that evil. Mm-hmm. But what makes America great is not our politicians. It's not even the government that we have. It's the ideas that are in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the people of the country. And the people have to take it back.
I think they're undergoing that right now. David Strom with Hot Air. Thank you, sir, as always. Great to talk to you today. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Look, the reality, of course, in the House and the Senate are things are a little closer than you or I want them to be. Unfortunately, the margins are not so big, so we can't completely write the obit for the Democrats just yet. But things are improving. Senator Tina Smith, Democrat, she's announced she's retiring That's opening up a big seat in Minnesota.
I wanted you to hear directly from me that I have decided not to run for re-election to the United States Senate.
Uh-oh, that opens up a good fight for us. Can we win it? Can we grow our margins? More ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show, including your calls and Chris Bedford in the next hour.